If you've ever watched the late great actor Bob Hoskins talk about taking the role of Mario back in the early 1990s, then you've probably heard the story about how he had no idea that the Super Mario Bros. Movie was based off of a popular line of video games. In fact, it wasn't until Bob's son showed him the cartridge that he finally connected the dots. Well, that's how I felt going into Dogman Mission Impossible. You see, when I loaded up this side-scrolling platformer, I had no idea that it was part of a long-running graphic novel series and a spin-off of Captain Underpants. Now, if you're of a certain age, you're probably shouting at your screen right now wondering how I could ever be so clueless. How could it possibly be that I've never heard of Dogman? Well, much like Bob Hoskins back when he agreed to be Mario, I'm old and, well, out of touch with the youth. I'm a relic from another era. But is that gonna stop me from enjoying a well-crafted 2D platformer? Heck no! This is my review of Dogman Mission Impossible. Oh no! The key to the city's been stolen by Piggy, the nefarious leader of the evil organization Fleas, and he intends to unlock the prison doors and release all of the evildoers. What are we gonna do? We're gonna call Dogman, of course. He, along with his super buddies, are on the case, sniffing out clues and chasing the leads through dozens of levels spread across 5 wildly different worlds. Watch out, criminals, because Dogman is on your tail, and in some cases, literally. So, who are Dogman's super buddies? First up, there's Cat Kid, aka Little Petey, an adorable kitty with a real penchant for technology. In the game, he's small and agile, allowing him to fit into tight paths and climb the walls with his sharp nails. Also on the case is Lightning Dude, also known as ADHD, a massive droid robot that's able to jump higher and use his strength to push crates around the level. Players will be able to switch between Dogman, Cat Kid, and Lightning Dude at pretty much any time. So you're going to find a bunch of levels created in such a way that requires you to use all of their different abilities. Now, at first glance, Dogman looks and feels like a fairly straightforward 2D platformer. It's a non-violent game where you jump on cartoony enemies to make them dizzy. There are no weapons and nobody dies, which I imagine is in the spirit of the book series. However, it's on that second glance when you start to realize that this is more than a simple platformer, because we're constantly being introduced to a lot of fun new abilities. This ends up gently transitioning the game from a simple action game to a surprisingly compelling puzzle game. A lot of this can be placed on the shoulders of the new abilities that we construct throughout the course of the game. All 3 of the heroes will earn extra moves and abilities, often something that'll give them access to a new part of the level or help them solve some sort of puzzle. For example, Dogman will build a grappling hook as well as a hang glider, 2 things that'll help him get around while jumping. Cat Kid, on the other hand, will be able to hack nearby computers and shrink objects that are in the way. All of this is reflected in the level designs, which go from real simple to elaborate by the time the game is over. You'll have to do more than just switch between the different characters, because you're also going to need to use their different abilities and upgrades. Now, as an old guy who spent 4 solid decades playing cartoony platformers, I could stick my nose up in the air and say that this has all been done before. That's because, well, it has. Dogman isn't exactly breaking any new ground here. However, for younger gamers, there should be more than enough ideas here to keep things fresh and constantly changing. And for those who love Dogman and all of his lore, this game is packed with familiar locations and tons of cameos. I'm sure that 99% of the references went right over my head. And you know what? I still had a good time running and jumping through these well-crafted stages. It helps that the visuals look like they were pulled straight out of the book. Although a bit on the simplistic side, the different stages do a good job of capturing the spirit of the book. They didn't attempt to make Dogman look like some overly animated 3D character, but rather they opted for a very simple 2 or 3 frames of animation, mimicking the moves and positions that are found in the book. Personally, I prefer this approach, though the target audience might be looking for something a little bit more modern. I don't know, perhaps something more akin to the upcoming movie. As a game aimed directly at kids, I found Dogman to be extremely charming. I thought back to games like DuckTales and Castle of Illusion, the cartoon games of my youth that left a real big impact on me. Although most of these ideas feel like old hat to me, there are probably some kids who'll be introduced to some of these puzzles for the first time through this game. If I were a kid who loved these books, I'd eat this game right up. The action is constantly changing, and there are so many fun extras to unlock along the way. However, if you're an adult with no prior love for this franchise, then you may want to sit this one out. Yes, it's a well-made platformer, but it's also extremely easy and maybe a bit too long for its own good. You're going to be shocked by how easy the boss fights are. There are battles here that barely lasted 60 seconds. If I were a kid seeing these far too easy boss fights, I'd feel insulted. It really is the one big flaw to an otherwise fun game. Look, despite some of these flaws, Dogman is a whole lot better than I was expecting. It's a game that uses the license well and gives fans more than they were asking for. It's loaded with new obstacles, enemies pulled straight out of the books, items to collect, and upgrades that'll change the way you look at each stage. Older gamers will recognize all of these tricks, but younger gamers who love Dogman will have a blast fighting crime with the Super Buddies. If you're a fan of Dogman, then prepare to be impressed by this well-crafted platformer. With a style pulled directly out of the books, this is a good-looking action game full of familiar locations and cool cameos. While younger gamers will surely enjoy cracking the case, older gamers will have seen a lot of these gimmicks before and will find the levels and boss fights to be far too easy. Look, you don't have to be a big fan to enjoy Dogman Mission Impossible. Let me tell you, it definitely helps. Hey, thanks for watching my final review of the year. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. In fact, I just reviewed Mission in Snowdrift Land just a few days ago. That's a game that shares a lot in common with this game. Now, here's the question I have for you. What licensed game got it right? That is to say, what game captured the spirit the most of a licensed property? Any licensed property, be it movie or a comic or music, you name it. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with a fun Game Zone countdown, as well as a look at the Nintendo Switch Online report card. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.